Hello, everyone. Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Gold and Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me today, it's Lee Wilmot, who's gone to do his best Alistair Gold impression. How are you?
I'm not sure I can do that. I'm not sure I can do the range of weird noises that he makes on on these podcasts, really. But yes, I'm fine, thank you, Guesty. Delighted to be here. We've allowed Ali to have a little bit of time off after 2 weeks in Japan and South Korea, haven't we? So I'm stepping in for him today to talk all things Tottenham and all things that went on during the tour, I suppose, as well. And what's to come with just under 2 weeks to go until the new Premier League season starts, and I can't wait, really. We've had a Euro summer, which has been enjoyable until the final, obviously, for England fans. But now let's get back into Premier League action and 9 months of thrills and spills, I think I called it in a piece I wrote yesterday.
Yeah, we will reflect on the tour of Japan and South Korea in the podcast. But what we'll start on is Tottenham's hunt for a new striker, because it's almost a year now since Harry Kane left to join Bayern Munich. He joined on the eve of the 23-24 season. Spurs still waiting to sign that front man. It has been a very quiet transfer window in general, I think, for all Premier League clubs. I was having a look at the lists of ins and outs, and there's a couple of notable signings, but other than that, there's not really been too much business this summer. But I imagine things will start to ramp up now, as we're probably just over 3 weeks away from the deadline, and Spurs need a striker.
We've needed a striker for as you say, it's been a long. It's not even just been a year, has it? Really, when you think about, yes, obviously we signed Richarlison, but that first year he was kind of had the injuries and wasn't really available, and he was brought in as someone that knew he was going to have to play second fiddle to Harry Kane when he first came in anyway. So yeah, it's just Harry Kane leaving last year heightened the fact that we needed a striker, but we needed one before that. We've always been searching for that backup striker, that person who can fill the void when either Harry Kane was injured, when he picked up an ankle injury, which seemed to happen quite regularly, or if he needed a rest, which we could never give him because we didn't have the quality backup option. Vincent Janssen tried, Fernando Llorente tried. Probably forgetting a few that I've kind of left to the bowels of my mind that I don't want to remember anymore. But we've not had one. We've not had a backup striker to Harry Kane, and we've now not seemingly got a first choice, albeit there's two of us on this podcast who are big fans of Richarlison. I don't know if he is the one who can really be a kind of a top four title challenging striker or not. I do like him, but I don't think he is that person to be the number one in a top four club. I don't know what you think on that, but we need someone. We as I say, we've needed someone for so many years now, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we will see one come in. But I don't know what's the situation at the minute.
Obviously, Spurs have interest in Dominic Solanke from Bournemouth. That's a bit of a big talking point, that, fair to say, amongst Tottenham fans. Yeah, I think quite a few have maybe turned their nose up at the possibility of signing Solanke from Bournemouth. He's not the big, high-profile name striker, but he did have a really good record for Bournemouth last season. And I think the main debate has been it's Solanke or Gyökeres, and I think a lot more people want Gyökeres, but I think he'd cost a lot more money. And Solanke isn't going to come cheap. I think it's there's a release clause in his contract for around £65 million for certain clubs, but it's very rare today you see clubs actually activate release clauses. Because I think Eze's got one at Crystal Palace, and you think in the performances he's delivered in recent seasons, you think someone will just go and pay, right, if it's 60 million, we'll just pay that straight away and get him. But you just don't seem to see clubs activating release clauses. So with Solanke, I think it's one that you are going to try and get him for a lot cheaper. So I think that is the main talking point, isn't it, with Solanke? It is the transfer fee. And you, as a Spurs fan, what's your view on it all?
Yeah, I I think you've mentioned there the fees that we've seen already. Spurs went and got business done very quickly with Archie Gray. They went to Leeds. Leeds had their valuation of him. It was obviously helped by the fact that Joe Rodon had been on loan there, and Spurs could kind of barter with sending him to Leeds as well. But there was a feeling then. It's like, well, Leeds want this value. Spurs say, well, we're happy to pay that value. Well, let's get it done, and got it done reasonably quickly. You do wonder whether there's kind of inner arguments behind the scenes at Spurs, not arguments, but kind of just differences of opinion over whether they want to sign Solanke, whether they want to sign Gyökeres because of the transfer fee involved, and whether everyone's on board with signing one of them. Because we have seen that with Archie Gray that was a lot of money for an 18-year-old, and Spurs went out there and said, right, here you go, let's get it done. It was done within days or whatever. So it does feel like from the outside that there might be kind of a few differences of opinion over who they should be going for. And as Alistair said in pieces, as you've written in pieces on football.london, Johan Lang works very differently to how Fabio Paratici worked as well. He's very quiet. Things come out of nowhere sometimes. Deals get done, so we don't always know what's going on behind the scenes and which players they're after, which can be frustrating from fans wanting to know about everything that's going on, and the number of links that there are. But I think you're right. At the minute, it does look like it's Solanke or Gyökeres. Having played for Sporting, I've not watched a lot of the Portuguese league, so not seen huge amounts of Gyökeres, but what I have seen, I've been impressed with. And you can't turn your nose up at 50 goal involvements in 50 games or something. I'm just looking now. 58 goal involvements in 50 games for Sporting last year. Admittedly, a lesser league than the Premier League, but what an incredible return that is. And he had a pretty good return for Coventry in the Championship the year before, didn't he? I think it was 30 in 40 games or something like that for Coventry, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was 17 goals he got. I can't remember about the assists, but it was brilliant for Coventry. And they've said it on a podcast earlier this summer. Like, I cannot believe no club 12 months ago went and moved for Gyökeres. Yeah. Because he'd done so well for Coventry. And you see the amount of players who have made the step up from the Championship to the Premier League, and they're just taken to like duck to water. Eze, Elise, Adam Wharton's the latest one at Crystal Palace, who's flourished since making the move. And Gyökeres looked made for the Premier League, really strong, got some pace about him, hold-up plays really good, link-up plays good. Just a powerful player with an eye for a goal, and he's proved that at Coventry and now at Sporting CP. So it's just going to be interesting in terms of Gyökeres where his next move is. And, he was another from the academy in Sweden at Bromma Postecoglou, I think it's called, where Bergvall and Kulusevski came through. And Brighton obviously saw something in him. But this is like a rare transfer miss for Brighton, where they've decided to let him go and he's flourished elsewhere.
Their scouting department knows what it's doing generally, and they obviously saw something in him, and he's shown it. They didn't show it for Brighton in that when he was there.
Yeah, I think it was only 8 appearances over a few seasons for them. 1 goal as well. I mean, those appearances came in cup competitions when they're given a chance to prove himself in the Premier League. But I just think he's made for Tottenham system, and Spurs need basically a penalty box striker, someone who's going to stay within the width of the goal and just be, on the end of the crosses coming into the box. Because we've seen last season and in pre-season, Brennan Johnson, Timo Werner, Son Heung-min, they can all put really good balls across the face of the goal. And Gyökeres is a predator. He's really good, penalty box striker. He's good with his first time finishing, taking some shots early and, deceiving the goalkeepers. But the main question with him is the price tag. How much you're going to end up paying? I don't think you'd end up paying the release clause. I think you'd pay less than that for him. But it's just a question of what fee would that be for him? And I mean, any transfer is a gamble. You don't know how things are going to pan out. But for me, if you're going to take a gamble on Gyökeres, it was 12 months ago when he was available for around 20 million from Coventry. 85 million or whatever it could potentially be. It's an awful lot of money for a striker from the Portuguese league. I think he does have experience of playing in England, which will certainly help him already. Doesn't have the Premier League experience, but I think he'd be a big hit in the Premier League. I think one comparison they made earlier in the piece was, regarding Darwin Núñez. He also was playing in the Portuguese league for Benfica. I think it was 26 goals in 28 games before he made the move to Liverpool. Not quite worked out for him in terms of scoring for Liverpool. I think it was 9 in the Premier League in his first season, 11 last year, but it has made an impact. But yeah, I think time will tell if Gyökeres does make the move to the Premier League at some point. But I think he's got all the attributes to be a big hit.
He's one, Darwin Núñez. I've never wanted to get on his case really, because when I watch him, I like so much of what I see from Darwin Núñez. It's just frustrating that he can't seem to find the back of the net. He gets in the positions, he makes the chances, he helps his teammates. He seems to do everything right apart from score the goals. And if you've got a Gyökeres like that who's come from that league and who can do that and can actually find the back of the net as well, then I think Spurs are on to win. I've just found his stats from the previous season when he was with Coventry. 34 goal involvements in 50 games in the Championship for Coventry. So 34 in 50 for Coventry, and then 58 in 50 for Sporting. He puts in the hours by the looks of things. The number of games he's played, 50 games in each of the last 2 seasons. So hopefully there's not an injury around the corner if Spurs were to sign him. But yeah, we've spoken a lot about Gyökeres there, and I'm having not seen massive amounts, looking at his stats and looking at the way he plays and what people have written about him. I'm excited by potentially signing him, but yes, he's going to cost an absolute fortune. Dominic Solanke is likely to cost an absolute fortune as well. Helps with the homegrown issue that Spurs have got as an English striker. Has a good record in the Premier League, particularly in the last season, and has done bits and pieces in the Championship as well. Like Gyökeres, probably got a better record in the Championship than Gyökeres actually, hasn't he?
He did. Bournemouth went down in 2020. Solanke's first season in the Championship, he scored 15 goals, and then the following year he got 29 when Bournemouth went up. Any other year he would have finished top scorer, but that was the season Mitrovic got like 43 goals in 44 games, which was just incredible. And in those 2 seasons, Gyökeres, the first season 2020-21, I think he spent half of his time at Swansea on loan and then the other half at Coventry. It was just 3 goals for him that season, and then it was 17, I think, the following year. But yeah, it's a big debate amongst Tottenham fans whether it should be Solanke or Gyökeres. I see a lot saying go for Gyökeres and then dismissing Solanke, but the thing is, Solanke has scored those goals in the Championship like Gyökeres did. He scored more than him. And then Solanke does have that Premier League experience to his name, and his numbers last year were really, really good. 21 goals in all competitions, 19 of those in the Premier League. I think it was about 8 behind Erling Haaland in the race for the Golden Boot. Finished on par with Ollie Watkins, and he finished ahead of Mohamed Salah and Son Heung-min. So I don't see how you can really dismiss Solanke. Personally, when you're looking at his record last season,
it's that kind of the English thing, isn't it? It's like, oh, we've got this differently named person from another country. Why don't we, who's scored banging the goals in? Why don't we go and it's more exciting to go and sign this person than it is to sign an Englishman? Essentially, I think the two issues maybe that for Tottenham fans would be, one, if you're going to sign an English striker, any Tottenham fan would probably pick Ollie Watkins. If out of any English striker that was available. Now, obviously, he's playing for Aston Villa. They've in the Champions League next year, and his dream is to play for Arsenal, so he says as well. So, although that was apparently Dejan Kulusevski's dream as well, and it's not turned out too badly having him at Spurs. So yeah, he's just not available. He's not up for grabs right now. And the other thing would be, we have seen Solanke admittedly in his younger days, play for Chelsea, play for Liverpool, and it's not quite worked out for him in either of them. And he's kind of dropped down a little bit to a lower Premier League level and found his footing. Can he make the step back up to where Tottenham want him? I think that will be what a number of Spurs fans will be looking at. But you're right, his record can't be sniffed at really in the last season or so.
Oh no, not at all. I think confidence is quite clearly high. Certainly, his game improved with the incoming of the manager last season, Iraola. At Bournemouth, they were playing more attacking football, and I think it benefited Solanke down to the ground. I was having a look at his goals for Bournemouth last season, and I think it was pretty much all but two were from inside the penalty box. I think it was Man U. He scored a shot from outside, and then I think Brighton away when the keeper was off his line, he scored from about 20 yards out. So he is a penalty box striker, and his finishing's good, and his finishing's always been good. Even when he was coming through the system at Chelsea, he was rated extremely highly. I think in the 2014-15 season when he was playing in like Premier League 2, the UEFA Youth League, and the FA Youth Cup, he got 31 goals in 34 games. So he's always had it in him. I think the problem at the time at Chelsea was they had Jose Mourinho as manager, Antonio Conte, and, you know, we've seen when they've been at Tottenham, they're not managers who've gone to look at the young players in the academy and bring them through. And maybe if Solanke was coming through Chelsea's system a few years later when, say, like Frank Lampard was in charge, and then all of a sudden you had Reece James, Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, Tomori as well coming through, then Solanke probably would have got his chance. Didn't quite work out for him at Liverpool, but obviously they saw the talent within Solanke and wanted to bring him to the club. And then at Bournemouth, it certainly worked for him. There's been a couple of seasons where he's not scored a lot in the Premier League. I think one of them was 3 goals. I think that was the year they went down, and then season before last was 6 goals, but still a young player. I mean, he's only 26, and maybe it has taken a bit of time to rediscover, you know, that goal scoring ability that he showed at Chelsea when he was a youngster.
That season he scored only 6. He actually got more assists, didn't he? So he was actually contributing to the team.
Yeah, and I think you've got to remember also this was a struggling Bournemouth team. Last season, Bournemouth, I think, probably were tipped to go down. Were one of the surprise packages in the end. So I think they were, a point off the top half.
Yep.
And one of the main reasons for that was Solanke scoring week in, week out. So he's obviously got it in him. And, you know, if he goes to Tottenham, he's going to be playing with better quality players. And look at the amount of chances Spurs create during games.
You know, you've said it. Yeah, I was just going to say, you've said it there already, that the way Tottenham play, and I've sat in the stands and fans have got frustrated and annoyed with the way Tottenham play, because it always seems to be the same way under Ange, and particularly in that first season, that get it out to the wide men, Brennan Johnson, Kulusevski, Son, Werner, get to the byline and fizz balls across the box. And to be fair, if we are playing that way, and you see us play that way week in and week out, you just need someone in the box to put the ball home, essentially. And it'll bring us on nicely to the next topic, which we briefly mentioned in Richarlison. Yes, I'm not saying we hang all of our hopes on Richarlison. We, as I've said right at the very beginning of this podcast, we do need a striker. We need another striker for years. But if he stays injury free, if we weren't to bring in anyone, God forbid, and he was injury free, he's Brazil's number 9. He is a penalty box striker. You get the ball in the box to him, he will find the back of the net. I am sure of it.
Yeah. I think he proved that last year between December and February when he was 9 Premier League goals in 8 appearances. That was by far his best, run of form in the Tottenham shirt. And he proved what he can do when his confidence is sky high. But the issue with him has been injuries since he's been at Spurs. It was 4 separate injuries last year. It's just a case of keeping him, injury free. But what we've seen so far in pre-season is he's not played because he's still, trying to work his way back to fitness from this calf injury. What stops him from playing in the last, 3 or 4 games last season? And in those 2 games before that, he made a big impact off the bench for Spurs when he came on against Arsenal and Liverpool, where, Spurs somehow, were given a glimmer of hope in the game when they were 4-0 down. And that's through Richarlison's work up front where he scores and, lays on an assist there. So he certainly can have a big impact in the final third for Spurs. But as we said, it's just a case of keeping him injury-free. And personally, I don't think Solanke is an improvement on Richarlison. But if you were to have both of them fully fit in the Tottenham team, like I said, with the chances they create, they can both, be in amongst the goals over the course of the season.
I think for me, with Richarlison, like, you get balls into the box. I'm convinced he'll score goals, and I think his hold-up play with the ball at his feet is good. And I think he can draw fouls like Harry Kane can. The issue I have is if you want to get some, and Postecoglou doesn't do this very often, obviously, but some longer, higher balls that you want Richarlison to hold up, I never have that confidence that he can hold them up like Harry Kane used to do. So if you then change the way you're playing a little bit, then we haven't got anyone to come off the bench and do that unless you ask Kulusevski to do that, which you've written about, and we know he can play in that central role and he enjoys playing in that central role. He's got the strength to potentially do that. But then you're looking at a Tottenham team that's trying to challenge for the top four and almost feeding off scraps with, we'll ask this person to do it because we haven't got anyone else, or we'll ask this person to do it because there's no one else in the team. We need to go out and bring someone else in, which is why we're having this conversation, why fans across the world are having this conversation about Tottenham, about bringing in another forward. We need that extra pair of hands essentially to give us that bit of added strength in depth. We've strengthened up the midfield with Lucas Bergvall and Archie Gray. I think the defence is pretty strong at the centre back with the three of them: Dragusan, Mickey van der Ven, and Christian Romero. I'm sure Postecoglou would probably like an extra one, perhaps a young centre back that can come in and offer some help as well. Probably a left back, although Ben Davies is there to support Destiny Udogie. I'm mixing two defenders there, but it's that forward line. It's that forward line where we need a bit more, don't we?
Oh, very much so. I think the thing for Spurs is you're never going to be able to replace Harry Kane.
No,
because of what he brought to the team. And let's be honest, Kane's best striker in the world, one of them. So you're never really going to get a player who's better than Kane. So he's looking for something a bit different. And yeah, whether it's Solanke or someone else, we'll have to wait and see. I think for Richarlison, it's just been a complete nightmare this summer. Such an important one for him as well, especially when a new striker's going to be coming in and he's just not being fit and available. And when he does return, he's going to be playing catch up. So there's 13 days now until the Premier League opener against Leicester. Fingers crossed there, a new striker will come in before then. So we'll have to wait and see. But
what? Well, I'm just going to ask you, what do we do in that Leicester game if Richarlison's not fit and we've got 13 days? It's unlikely someone signs within those 13 days and goes straight into the team. What do you do if you're Ange Postecoglou?
I think it'll be Kulusevski up front. I think he's a better option there than Son through the middle. Son's much better from the left. Kulusevski's got the, strength and power. It links up well with the wide men and the midfielders. So I think that'd be it. But hopefully that isn't the answer for the Leicester game. Hopefully, there is a new striker in before then. And if it's Solanke, I think he could do a job for Spurs personally. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on that front.
Do we know the latest on Richarlison and when he's going to be back? I know we've spoken before about when Postecoglou said in pre-season that Udogie was ahead of him in terms of schedule, and we've not seen either of them really. Udogie didn't come in against in the second half against Bayern, did he?
No, he wasn't in the squad. Ange said after the Team K League game that he was hopeful Destiny, might potentially be able to be there or thereabouts with his fitness and come back into it against Bayern, but that just wasn't the case. And I think he'd mentioned on so that Richarlison is behind Destiny in his fitness. So it's one of those where we'll just have to wait and see. I think we'll probably get a bit more of a picture this week because Angie's due to face the media on Friday in a press conference, and then Spurs are playing Bayern this weekend as well. So that will again for a change. So that'll drop
second leg, isn't it? We're 2-1 down. Second leg for the match now.
Yeah, it is. So I think that'll drop a bit more of a hint over his fitness, and give us more of an idea where exactly he is. So yeah, that's one to wait and see on. So in terms of this striker debate, then for you, Solanke, or would you just pay the money and go Gyökeres?
You put me on the spot there. I think, given I don't know, 20 million is a lot of money. Given there's probably not much, and as you said, I think you could probably go to Sporting and get that release clause dropped a little bit, because it has put a lot of teams off. 86 million, which is probably what Sporting were quite happy with, but I think they would be quite happy to take a big sum of money for him and make a huge profit on him. Arsenal have been put off. They were linked with Gyökeres. Chelsea have been linked with Gyökeres. I think Liverpool have been linked with him as well. I think if you were to go to 70 million for Gyökeres, I think Sporting might say yes. And then you're looking at maybe if Bournemouth say, well, we're not accepting any less than the release clause of 65, then you're looking at a 5 million, potentially 10 million if Spurs were to get 60 million. I probably would go for Gyökeres, just as a kind of exciting piece of business, and seeing what he could do in the Premier League. That's not to turn my nose up at Solanke, obviously, because I do think he is a good striker, and I think he could do a great job. I think I said in a piece I wrote, I think Solanke's a good striker. I'm not sure whether he's a great striker. I think Gyökeres, given his numbers, has the potential to be a great striker. So I think I'll probably go with him and be like every 99% of other Spurs fans out there and be an exciting foreign name. What about yourself? Who would you go with?
I'd prefer Gyökeres over Solanke. So I've rated Gyökeres for a few years now, since he went to Coventry. Saw quite a bit of him. I think he's a really good player. Deserves a chance in the Premier League, and I'm sure it'll come at some point. But if it's Solanke, I'm not against that, because I think that he just needs an opportunity to prove himself at a top club in the Premier League. Because, like I said, he's got that goal scoring ability, and you've got to remember also, he's playing at Bournemouth, a team who are always going to be there or thereabouts in the relegation scrap come the end of the season. So to get 19 goals last year, that can't be sniffed at all. And I think that tally will probably improve if he makes the move to Spurs. But again, with Solanke, it's just the valuation and how much you'd pay. Personally, I wouldn't be wanting to pay, north of 60 million for him. I don't know what Bournemouth would accept. I suppose it's one of these, when there was always talk of Zaha leaving Crystal Palace, and it was, you can have him for 80 million. Yeah, he wasn't worth 80 million, but he was worth 80 million to Crystal Palace.
Exactly that.
If he went, then they'd probably be in relegation contention. That's the same might happen to Bournemouth if Solanke goes. So I think it's just about getting the right price tag. But yeah, I think he could do a job, and I think Gyökeres would as well. Whoever they sign, if they sign.
You're absolutely right, though, aren't you? That it's a case of what ifs. If Spurs had gone and spent 20 million on Gyökeres last year after the Coventry, just imagine what a bargain that would have been then. If he'd then had a first season under Ange Postecoglou, doing what everyone else in the Spurs squad has done and getting used to his methods and his way of thinking, we could have been looking at now the exciting second season under Postecoglou with a striker who was already set. Yeah,
I think whoever Ange wants, you've just got to back him, to be honest. Because, look at the transfer deals last summer, when there was talk of Guglielmo Vicario joining from Empoli for 17 million, which was a cheaper deal than David Raya. Fans were shouting, no, we want Raya. And then it was probably the same with Mickey van der Ven as well. Edmund Tapsoba at Bayer Leverkusen was the more expensive option, and maybe the one fans wanted more than van der Ven. But look what Vicario and van der Ven have done in the Tottenham team since. Then whoever Ange wants, you've just got to trust him personally.
Yep, exactly that.
Right, we're I think probably more than halfway through the latest episode of Golden Guest Tottenham.
Whoever knew we could talk about a new striker that much? It's what everyone wants to talk about, isn't it?
Big talking points, plenty to discuss. So, yeah, I'll let everyone know about the benefits of using our sponsors, NordVPN. If you're not aware by now, the Golden Guest Tottenham podcast is sponsored by NordVPN, and you can use the service in a host of different ways to enhance your internet experience. NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means there's no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. You can use Nord to set your device to thinking it's back in the UK and just watch your TV programs or whatever as normal. Not only that, but the outlay on the NordVPN subscription is cheaper for you in the long run. And that's because you can purchase streaming services in other countries at a much cheaper rate. So, for example, you can change your virtual location to Japan or South Korea, maybe, where Ali has been in the past few weeks, covering Tottenham on their pre-season tour, and you can maybe book flights from there or another country you want to book flights from. Also, security-wise, it's a great system for pretty much going as far as you possibly can to stop people stealing things off your device. And if you connect to a public Wi-Fi, it's such a clever app that you can install on any device you've got, quite frankly. And it's very easy to set up, and you get straight on and going with it. There's a whole host of benefits to signing up for NordVPN. So why not give it a go? To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.
Well said.
Right.
I imagine, I haven't looked at his YouTube channels, but I imagine he's been using it to watch movies while he's out there. I know we know Ali loves his movies, so I imagine he's been using NordVPN while he's been out in South Korea and Japan and watching movies and stuff like that. On his Netflix
I think
stuff.
It's more the soaps. He just says.
We're going to get it in the neck for saying that when he comes back next week.
Yeah, but I'm sure he made full use of NordVPN in Japan and South Korea, and he'll do the same this week when he's on a holiday again.
He is on holiday.
Number this one is, but yeah,
it's a running theme, isn't it? The you two going back and forth with each other. A number of holidays you have.
Yeah, it is. He goes on more. Right, we'll talk about Tottenham's 2-1 defeat against Bayern Munich last weekend in South Korea. It was a game that wrapped up the tour of Japan and South Korea. Spurs had gone into game 4 successive victories. Didn't quite work out for them against Bayern, though. 2-1 defeat. I think they were second best for the vast majority of the contest, and probably didn't deserve anything from the match, I'd say.
Yeah, full disclosure, I watched some of the first half while I was working alongside you on Saturday, and then I was out watching some FA Cup extra preliminary round local action in the second half, so I didn't see the second half. But yeah, from everything that I've seen and everything that I've read, it does seem like that Bayern were the better side, and yeah, there's a few things that Ange Postecoglou needs to work on in the last couple of weeks before the Premier League starts, because that's a team that they're going to have to, the quality of which they're going to have to come up against in the Premier League if they want to be challenging at the top of the league this season. So it's all well and good winning games against Hearts and QPR and K League, but that's a team like Bayern is what's going to be expected in the Premier League. So yeah. So, it's been interesting to see the players that he's wanted to utilise in the system, the young players like Bergvall and Archie Gray and the minutes they're going to get. Jed Spence is a very interesting one in terms of the time he's been given on the pitch and the opportunity that kind of Postecoglou's given to him and said to him, right, here you go, show us what you can do now, because he's had a very... I was going to say up and down, but it's been a very down career at Tottenham so far. There haven't been many ups for Jed Spence so far. And he was involved in that first goal, wasn't he? Which probably was maybe 30% his fault, but 70% Vicario's fault, I felt.
For me, it was more on Vicario. It was a really poor pass. Wasn't to Spence. I think it was to his left, and that allowed Serge Gnabry a really good chance to nip in and win the ball, and that's exactly what he did. I'm not sure in that situation if it was Spence calling for the ball or whatever, but Vicario, when the play's in front of you, surely you can see there's pressure coming there. So it's a ball maybe he shouldn't have played. But I thought after that, I thought Spence reacted really well. Chips in defensively, and then, at the start of the second half, showed what he can do, moving forward with a couple of really good attacking runs. He was linking up with Son on a couple of occasions in the second half. And this is Spence playing in a role what's maybe not natural to him. So he's a right-sided player. He was operating on the left with Pedro Porro, being played in his customary position at right back. And Spence has played there on a few occasions. A few of those came during his time at Leeds when Archie Gray actually took his place in the team at right back. But I think Spence showed in the game against Bayern that he can be a good option for Spurs going forward. And I think, let's be honest, it was a transfer everyone thought would happen this summer in terms of Spence moving away from the club, because he'd spent the past 18 months away from the club on loan at, Rennes, Leeds and Genoa. And you were thinking this is a summer he needs to cut ties with Spurs and, head elsewhere and play regularly. But it's quite clearly come back to Spurs this summer, made a big impression on Ange and his coaching staff. And when Ali has been in South Korea, has been, doing a sit-down interview with Ange, and he has asked him about Jed. And, Ange really has praised Jed for the work he's put in and making a big impression since coming back. And, he's very much mentioned that there is a place for Jed in the Tottenham squad, if he continues to take control of his own direction, which he's certainly doing at the moment. So, yeah, I think the way he's going at the moment, he can be an option for Tottenham this season, whether that's at right back or left back. But I think one thing for certain is all Tottenham fans are looking forward to seeing a bit more of him in the Spurs team. So I think it's only, 7 senior appearances to his name since moving from Middlesbrough 2 years ago.
Yeah, I was just, so you mentioned there, obviously, Ali did a sit-down with Ange Postecoglou while he was out in South Korea. I thought I'd get the quotes up. I know Ali loves to do this in a podcast, get his own quotes and read them out to people. So since he's not here, I'll give you the quotes from Postecoglou while I guess he has a drink. So, yeah, Ange Postecoglou sat down with Ali, and Ali was very interested in what's happening with Spence, obviously being given an opportunity that perhaps no one would have expected in pre-season, because, yeah, as you said, Gessi, that Genoa, Leeds might have gone for him, and it would have been one that Spurs fans would have been expecting to leave and get a bit of money out of this summer. Now it could be that he actually becomes the backup to Pedro Porro and fills a homegrown space in the squad this season that we might not have expected. But yeah, Postecoglou said, I think with Jed, for me, we got him back into pre-season and we're judging him on his merits. He's a Tottenham player, and to be fair to him, I think he's been very, very good for us this pre-season in terms of the way he's trained and his general attitude. A lot of these things are in the players' hands themselves. They kind of decide their own future in many respects, and I think Jed is in that boat. I think there's an opportunity for him here for sure. Thinking about building a squad, he would definitely be somebody who could contribute with the attributes he has. I think the interesting thing there is the way Postecoglou said he's been very, very good in terms of the way he's trained and his general attitude, because I think that was one of the things that stood out and that Antonio Conte wasn't perhaps a fan of. And we all know that Antonio Conte had that quote of, he was a club signing, he wasn't my signing. I think his attitude and perhaps the way he was behind the scenes was one of the things that stood in his way of him making a real go of it at Tottenham. And if he's sorted that out, if he's on the right path, perhaps we will see the Jed Spence that Tottenham decided to sign a couple of years ago.
Yeah, very much so. I think maybe things have just clicked for him this summer. You know, new season, fresh start for everyone, and he quite clearly has, done everything right to come into the thinking of Postecoglou and the coaching staff. And, as Andrew says, like, he's pretty much in Jed's hands, really, his destiny. If he can, keep on going the way he is, then I think he's definitely going to be a part of the squad going forward. And, he can be a good player in the Tottenham team, because we've seen what he can do previously when he was at Nottingham Forest. It was excellent that season. maybe didn't play as regularly as he wanted at Leeds. The injury early on certainly didn't help him. And then, the opportunity to go to Serie A and play. I know he was in and out of the team at times, but he still played an awful lot for Genoa. And that experience of playing in Serie A has only gone to have helped his game and, developed him. And hopefully Spurs will see the full benefits of that going forward from August onwards.
I think that one quote I didn't say there is he's a very good player who fits into our football, and I think that's interesting. Like every time I've seen Jed Spence, he's always wanted to get on the front foot, always wanted to get forward, and that's what Postecoglou wants out of his fullbacks. He wants them to get forward, and we saw that with Pedro Porro scoring the goal against Bayern. Obviously, he was in that position, the furthest man forward almost. So yeah, if Jed can do that, he stands a very good chance of making his way into that Tottenham squad.
Yeah, someone else who was starting on Saturday against Bayern, Archie Gray. What we've seen so far from Archie is playing as a centre-back just because of the lack of numbers there. But in the past 2 games against Team K-League and Bayern, he has been given a go in his natural number 6 role in midfield. Whether it's a hint of things to come because he was selected ahead of Bissouma, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. This weekend's game against Bayern might drop a big hint over maybe Andrew's plans for the Leicester game. But, I think Gray's displayed this summer that he's a play for the here and now for Spurs. I don't think he's one of these where you're going to have to ease him in. I think you could put him in from the get-go against Leicester. Whether that actually is the case or not, we'll have to wait and see. I think against Bayern, he did struggle. It was undoubtedly a step up in quality. And I mean, this is for Tottenham team as a whole. And that's what you want in pre-season, to be coming up against better opponents closer you get to the season. And it was a tough day for Archie Gray and a number of the Spurs players. I think he was guilty of giving the ball away a couple of times. One of them led to a chance where Matisse Tell put the ball across the face of goal and Son had to divert it over his own crossbar. But I think Spurs team as a whole were tired, really tired from, a hard 10 days or so, working in the heat of Japan and South Korea and putting in the hard yards ahead of the new season. And yeah, that's not the main reason for why they lost the game against Bayern, because I think Bayern certainly did look better than them for me across the 90 minutes. But I think it'll have done the world of good for Archie Gray to be playing in that number 6 role against players such as Joshua Kimmich, and I think it was Pavlovic as well, who was in the middle, and that's only going to help him as he looks to become an established Tottenham player. But I think he's certainly going to give Bissouma a run for his money for that number 6 role in the team.
I don't think you play 50 games in the Championship to not be a player for the here and now, do you? Really? He may be only 18, but doesn't matter how old you are. If you're a good player, aren't you? So I think the thing I've liked about Archie Gray is it's weird to say I've liked it because you mentioned it there. He did give the ball away a few times, but I've liked what I've seen when he has given the ball away, and I think Ange Postecoglou will have liked what he's seen when he's given the ball away, because he's trying to move the ball forward. He's trying to find those passes, get Tottenham on the front foot, and kind of almost pick the lock, play through the lines in midfield to go from defence to attack with one pass essentially. So yeah, I think Postecoglou like that. I've come to expect that essentially Spurs will make mistakes trying to play out from the back because of the way Ange wants them to play. But yeah, I don't mind it if you're trying to play a ball through the lines and it doesn't quite come off. I'd much rather people do that rather than play sideways and backwards.
Oh yeah, that's what you want in your midfield players, really, to be playing progressive passes, not going sideways.
Yeah,
with it, you want someone who's going to try something and get the team moving forward, and Gray's shown that so far when he has been playing in that midfield role. Speaking of midfielders, someone who we want to see influence things further forward, that's James Maddison. Started pre-season well. I thought in the Hearts game looked a lot more on it than in the final few months of last season, where he was struggling for form after recovering from injury. He's not quite gone his way since then, because the quality he's got, and you just want him to be making things happen in that final third for the attackers. But that's just not been the case for Maddison so far. What have you made of him?
Do you? I was just going to ask you a question. Actually, do you think he's a bit concerned about the fact that Lucas Bergvall's come in and kind of shown what he could? Even he's only 18, but has shown what he can do already. Do you think he feels a little bit threatened by him? And you almost want that to give players a kick up the backside when they get threatened by a new player coming in, but perhaps that hasn't quite happened for Maddison at the minute, because Bergvall is more than capable of playing in that forward 8, almost 10 role as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he'll probably just be concentrating on his own game first and foremost, because he knows he needs to get back to those levels. But I think he will have seen that Bergvall is, making a big impact in the team already, and he's someone who can play in his position. So I think he's someone who, Bergvall probably will be keeping him on his toes over the coming weeks. But yeah, I think it's just a case of you need more from Maddison, and there's one more pre-season game to go. We'll see how things pan out for him. But I mean, he's not the only one. I think Brendan Johnson probably could have offered a bit more in the pre-season games. Not really seen so much from him when the likes of Dane Kulusevski and Son Heung-min have been, having an influence in that final third, and Johnson hasn't. So I think you do need more from Johnson and Maddison. But, pre-season's not the be-all and end-all. It's what they do once the season starts, what's the main thing. And I imagine Maddison will be in the starting 11 against Leicester, and it will be his first time back at the King Power Stadium since leaving Leicester and making the move for Spurs. So he'll be certainly looking to have a big impact on that game, and he certainly needs it as well after being dropped from the England squad, because with a new manager coming in, it's an opportunity for him there to, come back into the squad and maybe establish himself in the first 11, what he'll want to do. And I think just having, Bergvall, Alfie Devine's been fantastic in pre-season as well. I don't know whether he'll have a role in the team going forward this season. I think alone may be more beneficial for him, but there's certainly players now in the Tottenham team who can give Maddison a run for his money, and hopefully that just brings out the best in him.
I almost wonder if Maddison's got to get used to a slightly different role in Postecoglou's team moving forward, because we've had a season now with Postecoglou in charge, and with Archie Gray in there, who's quite capable of kind of sitting and getting things moving going forward. Rodrigo Bentancur can sit in there and also get Spurs on the front foot. Pat Matar is getting better at doing that as well, and is capable of being that kind of defensive pivot, but also start things going. It doesn't necessarily need Maddison to be dropping so deep and getting the ball off defenders and starting things. He can almost float around that kind of middle third of the pitch a bit more and look for the passes, look for the balls from which other two midfielders are there, and look to get Spurs on the front foot through the final third, which perhaps he wasn't doing last season because he was feeling that he had to go and collect the ball from the defenders sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he's best at, influencing things in the final third, and that's what he wants him to do. And maybe that is a case of what he needs to start doing a bit more of. I think the midfield options are certainly going to be better going into this season. Rodrigo Bentancur hopefully will be able to, get back to the levels he was displaying on the weekly basis prior to that ACL injury. Pat Matar will only be better for having another full season of Premier League football under his belt. I think Yves Bissouma, hopefully he can replicate the levels he was showing in the first few months of last season. And I think the purchase of Archie Gray probably will help him as well, because Gray's certainly coming for his position. And then you've got Lucas Bergvall, who someone who were maybe thinking it'd be a few months down the line before he'd maybe force his way into the Tottenham 11 and make an impact. But I think what we've seen from him so far is you certainly wouldn't be afraid of putting him into a Premier League game, in the
was going to say
season.
I was going to say, out of the two 18-year-olds coming in, obviously, with Archie Gray having played 50 times in the Championship for Leeds, I would expect, and I think a lot of Spurs fans would expect, that if you're going to put one of them in straight away, it would be Archie Gray that plays in the midfield, and Lucas Bergvall will be kind of eased into things. But the way he's been playing in pre-season, and it is completely different to what's going to happen in the Premier League. Obviously, he's going to have to get used to the rigours and the impact, and how tough the Premier League is, how tough Premier League defenders and midfielders are. At the minute, you wouldn't. I don't think too many Spurs fans, having watched pre-season, would have too much of an issue if Lucas Bergvall were to start against Leicester.
No, not at all. I don't think age should be a consideration, or maybe lack of experience, because if they're good enough, they're old enough, and it has made things happen in pre-season. And look at the second half against Bayern. I think they had João Palhinha in midfield, who's we've seen over the past few years, fantastic midfielder at Fulham. He's gone to Bayern for big money now, so that was a good test for Bergvall, and I think he came out with it with flying colours. Really, what he did in the second half, him and Alfie Devine really upped the tempo and started to try and take the game to Bayern, which just wasn't the case in the first half, because Spurs were really poor going forward, and it was just Bayern having wave after wave of attack. But yeah, I think Bergvall has made an impression so far, and I think we will probably see quite a bit of him early on. But it's just a case of the squad. Naming a 20-man squad's actually going to be quite tough this season if everyone's fit, because some big players will be left out.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a lot more strength that he wanted, and we've obviously let a few players go as well in the summer. I still think there are a few more that probably need to go out the door. We're waiting on what might happen with Emerson Royale. Sergio Reguilón is still around, having been left at home during the tour to explore transfer options. We don't know what's going to happen with Oliver Skipp yet, in terms of his future and whether he's got a place in the squad now that we've got that extra strength and depth in the midfield. So yes, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks until the Premier League season actually starts, and then an interesting extra week or so with the transfer window still open as well, in terms of incoming and outgoing. But you're absolutely right. It's going to be interesting to see what that first 20 he names as a week on Monday, because there are a lot of big decisions that he's going to have to make, I think.
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly what you want if you're a team pushing towards maybe the top 2 or 3 in the Premier League, where Ange wants Spurs to be. Then you need a big squad. This is the decisions what Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola have had in previous years. And I think Ange said in one of the interviews with Ali that he was pretty much glaring last season in terms of the lack of numbers for Spurs, and that's what they've needed to improve on, and they have so far. They've made some much needed changes to the squad, but a lot more still needs to be done. And to compete for the major honours, compete towards the top of the Premier League, you need a big squad. And yeah, that's what Spurs are building to at the moment. Still need a couple more additions, which will hopefully be the case over the next week or so, as that transfer deadline, the August the 31st, draws ever closer. So yeah, actually no, August the 30th is Friday. Friday the 30th. So yeah, big few weeks coming up, and I think the next game against Bayern on Saturday will certainly help the preparations. It's probably an ideal game ahead of the new season. We've seen Christian Romero, Rodrigo Bentancur, Giovanni Lo Celso, Mickey van der Ven return to Hotspur away yesterday. So fingers crossed they'll be able to play some part in the game. So the squad is going to start looking stronger, and that's just what you need ahead of the new season.
That's interesting, those ones, because I don't think there's any Spurs fan out there that wouldn't start with Romero, Van der Ven in the back line against Leicester. But for a coach like Postecoglou, who wants his players up to speed and in the zone when it comes to the amount of work that they have to put in his teams, will he feel like they've got enough in their legs from 2 weeks of training to throw them straight in from the starting? I imagine he will, because they're such important players. But it's just an interesting conundrum, isn't it? That you kind of look at, and you do wonder if it might play on his mind.
I think they'll be straight into the team.
Yeah, I think they will as well. Yeah,
I mean, look, 12 months ago, away at Brentford opening day, Mickey van der Ven had signed a few days before.
that's true. Yeah, very true.
2 training sessions, didn't really know who was playing alongside because of the lack of training, but he was straight in there and he's just gone from strength to strength ever since. I don't think Angela have any doubts about, Romero van der Ven's fitness, maybe.
They've got a whole season of playing alongside each other, so they know each other's games, don't they? That was just me playing devil's advocate a little bit there.
Yeah, and I mean, there's Radu Dragusin to consider now, a really good option as well. So I think we probably will see changes across the season, but I imagine it will be Romero and Van der Ven from the off.
And it'll be interesting against Bayern if Udogie plays against Bayern, whether he's fit enough to play against Leicester or if Ben Davies has to kind of supplement in there at left back.
Yeah, I think.
Or if Mickey van der Ven gets moved out there and Dragusin plays as a centre back alongside Romero for the opening game.
Or Emerson, if he's still at the club.
Yes, or Emerson.
And there's Jed Spence at left back as well, because he did all right there against Bayern. So, yeah, I think that'll give an indicator in terms of Udogie's fitness. It's not the ideal situation, is it, with Udogie and Richarlison not playing in pre-season so far, going to be playing catch-up when they do return. But, yeah, just want to keep an eye out this week. I think we'll know a lot more about those two level of fitness by the end of the week.
Absolutely, yeah. It's big week, big couple of weeks, and then it all starts again next weekend. Can't wait.
Yeah, edging ever closer. 13 days now until the Leicester City opener. So big
I
season.
stupidly organised a holiday, so I'm flying on the Monday of the game. Forgot that we were playing on the Monday. I thought I was going to be out there out in Spain for the Monday game, but I'm flying exactly the time I think we're due to kick off. So what a delight that'll be.
Once you're there, though, you can use NordVPN.
I can exactly that. Yes, game. Absolutely.
Right, we'll leave that there for today's latest episode of Golden Guest Tottenham. We might be back later this week. If not, it'll be early next week to reflect on the Bayern game.
We'll be back if there's a transfer. Should we say that? if Tottenham have signed someone, we'll be back.
So it's all on Tottenham this next episode.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, if not, we'll be back next week to reflect on the Bayern game and then also look ahead to the new Premier League season. So in the meantime, just keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.